The most difficult thing I've ever had to do in my life was call my mother and father-in-law and tell them that their daughter had just been killed in a plane crash. How do you tell someone that the young woman they conceived and loved and nurtured through 30 years of a wonderful life is gone forever? They say that losing a son or a daughter is the toughest thing you ever experienced in life, and from the reaction I heard on the phone that night, I know this is true. Now, nobody is keeping score on these things, but I personally believe that it's a tie with the numbing devastation you feel when you lose a spouse. I experienced both these things on the same day, August 2nd, 1985, and even though 3 decades have passed since that horrible summer afternoon, I'm always reminded of Deborah's laughter, her smile, her charm, her intelligence, her soap operas, and her kindness toward others. Some of you here may remember her. She was the class of 1977, and Bowdoin being Bowdoin, everyone knew everyone else. But I didn't come here today to talk to you about death and dying or grief and grieving. I actually came here to talk to you about a fortune cookie. You see, several years after Deborah's death, I was having dinner one night in a Chinese restaurant. I was totally consumed with heartache, and I had lost all interest in my career and the future. I felt like I was trapped in a black hole that was just devouring all of my energy. Well, that night I cracked open my cookie and pulled out a message that really on the surface wasn't all that profound. In fact, I've gotten it several times since then, and you may have too if you eat anywhere near as much Chinese food as I do. But that night, those 9 words on that little strip of paper gave me the boost that I needed at that time. Live your life as a bold and dashing adventure. Now, I ruminated over those 9 words that night, and they must have followed me into my dreams as well, because the next morning, strangely enough, I woke up with this renewed sense of optimism, enthusiasm, excitement even. It was strange at that time in my life. That day, I made the decision that I was going to live my life as a bold and dashing adventure. Not bold in the James Bond sense, that's not me, or dashing in the style of George Clooney, that's certainly not me. But I made the conscious decision that day that I was going to live every day larger than the day that came before and greet each new dawn with this renewed sense of hope and optimism. That day, I went hiking for the first time in a long time. I bought a bicycle and I went cycling. I started writing again and I published my first murder mystery. I interviewed everyone from George Carlin to Tony Bennett, Al Franken to Donald Trump. I had lunch with the president in the White House, and I urinated next to Hugh Hefner at a restroom in Hollywood. I know, it's too much information, but I've got to tell you, that's what adventure is all about. I became less cynical, and I like to think a lot more compassionate. I learned to give more and take less. I fell in love all over again with a wonderful woman named Diana, who's sitting right there. Because of her, I became a stepfather, which taught me endless patience and selflessness. I relearned polynomials, helped out with school projects, and coached youth soccer. With my new wife by my side, I learned how to ski and snorkel and scuba dive. We honeymooned in the South Pacific, and later we took a couple years off and lived in the Virgin Islands. When we came back, we settled in Charleston, South Carolina, and since then, I've published a half dozen more books. But enough about me. It really is my least favorite subject in the world. However, it does bring us around to a very hard truth that we all face as we push further into our 60s. The fact is that we, the class of 1978, have already lived 3/4 of our statistical lives, which means we have 20, maybe 30 good years left. Now that may seem a little bleak, but I like to think of it in terms of up to 10,000 more wonderful days that lie ahead. And my message to all of you is to make every single one of them count. I'm here today to urge you to live the rest of your life as a bold and dashing adventure. Forget the bucket list. As someone who experienced death up close, I've really come to dislike that term. I really ask you to look at each new day as a new beginning rather than just one day closer to the end. Paint a picture. Take photographs. Read a book. Write a book. Hike the waterfalls in Yosemite. Stroll along the Seine in Paris, or sail the crystal turquoise waters of the Caribbean. Play catch with your dog if you have one, and if you don't, visit and volunteer at a pet shelter. Hug your children and your grandchildren. And most important, kiss your wife or your husband or your partner every day without fail. And make sure you tell them that you love them. Whatever you do, however you do it, wherever you go, be bold, be dashing, and always, always make it an adventure. Thank you.